I've always navigated life carefully, balancing family, business, and trust. My son Ethan married a woman named Vivienne Hayes, whose wealth and ambition seemed endless. 3 years later, the families were merging companies in a lavish celebration filled with champagne, speeches, and smiles. I was there trying to stay composed amid unfamiliar power dynamics. Everything seemed normal until I noticed a subtle movement from Vivienne, slipping something into my wine. Time slowed. Panic rose, but before I could react, Ethan, sharp and protective, noticed it and quietly switched our glasses. Minutes later, Vivienne began rambling, her control unraveling before everyone's eyes. And then Ethan leaned over, whispering with calm authority, "Wait for my speech. I'm about to expose this entire family." In that moment, I realized the balance of power had shifted completely, and the night that began with celebration would end in shock, revelation, and subtle reversal. My name is Dorothy Carmichael. I am 65 years old and I have spent my life carefully balancing family, business, and trust. Tonight, I arrived at the lavish hall where my son, Ethan, and his spouse, Vivienne Hayes, were hosting a celebration for the merger of our companies. The lights shimmered off crystal chandeliers, waiters moved gracefully among guests, and laughter filled the room, yet beneath the glamour, I felt the tension of intertwined ambitions. I held my glass tightly, savoring the warm air and the subtle perfume of fresh flowers, but my instincts whispered caution. Years of experience had taught me to observe quietly, notice every movement, and read unspoken cues. Tonight, I would need all my awareness, for appearances could not be trusted, and something in the atmosphere hinted that this celebration would not remain ordinary. Ethan stood at the center, charming, confident, and protective, a man I had watched grow from boyhood into a capable, thoughtful adult. Beside him was Vivienne Hayes, striking and polished, radiating wealth and ambition. Their smiles were flawless, but I sensed the calculated precision behind them. Vivienne had always exuded control, subtle but unmistakable, and I realized immediately that she saw this celebration as an opportunity to cement her status not just socially, but within our family and business. Guests admired her elegance and poise, but beneath the surface, I could detect the undercurrent of strategy. I studied her carefully, noting gestures, expressions, and moments of hesitation. My intuition whispered that appearances were deceiving, and that tonight, her charm might conceal intentions far more dangerous than anyone expected. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as colleagues, partners, and family mingled, celebrating a merger that promised prestige, wealth, and influence. Champagne flutes clinked as speeches began, laughter echoing through the grand hall. I walked slowly among the crowd, exchanging polite greetings, while keeping a close eye on interactions around me. Everyone was caught up in the spectacle, the music, and the glamour of the evening, but I felt a growing awareness beneath the surface energy. Ambition mingled with family pride, creating a delicate balance. I reminded myself that in such celebrations, charm and courtesy could mask ulterior motives. Tonight was not only about achievement, but about testing loyalties, alliances, and trust. My senses sharpened as I navigated the crowd, quietly noting each expression and subtle movement that might hint at hidden agendas. As the evening progressed, I noticed subtle undercurrents between the two families merging their businesses. Conversations, though polite, carried underlying friction. Smiles were carefully measured, and occasional glances revealed unspoken rivalry. I sensed hesitation in introductions, and moments where laughter felt slightly forced. While most guests were absorbed in the spectacle, I observed the way hands moved nervously, how certain words were chosen carefully, and how some avoided eye contact. This tension was subtle, almost imperceptible to those distracted by glittering surroundings, but it told a story. Every merger carries ambitions, insecurities, and fragile alliances. Tonight, the line between celebration and competition was thin, and I could feel it tautly stretched across the room. My instincts warned me that the balance could shift at any moment, and I remained alert to every movement, ready for the unexpected. Despite the tension, I allowed myself to appreciate the luxury surrounding me. The chandeliers sparkled, the tables were adorned with fresh flowers, and the scent of gourmet dishes filled the air. Yet, I never let beauty distract me from the undercurrents in the room. I studied the subtle power plays unfolding, noticing how smiles masked ambition and polite conversation often his strategy. My awareness of these dynamics had sharpened over decades of observing both business and family interactions. While others were lost in celebration, I remained an observer, attuned to the subtle nuances that could later reveal intentions. The juxtaposition of opulence and hidden tension reminded me that appearances are often deceptive, and tonight, the true story would unfold behind the smiles and champagne toasts, in moments too fleeting for casual attention. Vivienne moved through the crowd with calculated precision, engaging key guests with charm and attentiveness, yet always directing attention subtly toward herself. Every handshake, smile, and nod seemed orchestrated, a gentle assertion of influence. She was aware of her presence, controlling perception, without seeming forceful. I noticed the way she positioned herself near important guests, how she guided conversations, and how her words emphasized her family's success. Each gesture was a subtle declaration of dominance and ambition. Even while others were distracted by the spectacle, I could read the deliberate intention behind her behavior. It was a quiet warning that Vivienne's ambition extended beyond mere social grace. It was strategic, calculated, and potentially dangerous. I took mental notes, knowing that vigilance and foresight would be necessary for the night ahead. Amidst laughter and clinking glasses, I felt a strange unease, a flicker of discomfort I couldn't immediately place. A brief glance revealed Vivienne moving near my wine glass with subtle, almost imperceptible precision. My instincts, honed over years of observing subtle cues, screamed caution. Something about the timing, the way she lingered, and her attention to my presence felt deliberate. I didn't panic, but I recognized that danger could be disguised in elegance and celebration. Every instinct in my body told me to stay alert, observe closely, and trust my intuition. The first hint that something was off was fleeting, but it planted a seed of awareness that would guide every action for the rest of the evening. I knew even then that the night held surprises far beyond what anyone anticipated. During the celebratory toast, Vivienne's movements drew my attention. She held her glass with an almost imperceptible hesitation, eyes glancing subtly toward me. Her smile was practiced, flawless, yet her gestures betrayed a hint of calculation. I noticed the careful tilt of her wrist, the way she angled the bottle slightly, and the micro-expression of concentration flicker across her face. The surrounding laughter and clinking glasses masked her actions, but my instincts, sharpened by decades of observing subtle human behavior, picked up the incongruity. Something about her demeanor screamed pretense. I felt the familiar tug of caution, an instinctive awareness that not all was as it appeared. The joyful ambience of the celebration suddenly became a backdrop to a potential threat, one that required immediate attention and quiet observation to prevent disaster. I watched, frozen yet alert, as Vivienne subtly moved near my wine glass. Her fingers hovered over it briefly before retreating, almost imperceptibly, yet my trained eyes caught the motion. The room's festive energy contrasted sharply with the tension forming in my chest. A moment so brief might have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but my decades of experience taught me that small, deliberate gestures often reveal intent. My mind raced, weighing possibilities, calculating risks. Every instinct screamed caution. I shifted slightly, keeping my composure while maintaining observation. The elegant laughter around me felt surreal, almost cinematic, as if the scene was unfolding in slow motion. I knew that a single decision in the next seconds could determine the difference between safety and harm. Ethan, standing nearby, noticed the subtle irregularity instantly. His gaze followed Vivienne's hand, sharp and protective, reading intentions that others might overlook. His instincts, finely tuned over years of working closely with family dynamics and business dealings, recognized the hidden danger immediately. I felt a surge of relief as he leaned subtly toward me, eyes signaling awareness without alarming the crowd. There was a silent understanding, a shared knowledge that the situation required careful handling. Ethan's presence became my anchor, his awareness the shield that could prevent disaster. Together, our subtle communication conveyed the urgency without disrupting the celebration, turning a potential crisis into a manageable moment. His calm, decisive observation contrasted sharply with the underlying tension, creating a quiet yet powerful layer of protection that Vivienne hadn't anticipated. In one fluid, discreet movement, Ethan switched our glasses. The motion was so seamless that no one noticed, but it neutralized the threat immediately. I felt a mixture of awe and relief as the potential danger evaporated in an instant. The act was silent, elegant, and precise, a perfect example of decisive action without spectacle. The room continued its joyful rhythm, unaware that a hidden crisis had just been averted. At that moment, I realized the depth of trust and understanding between us. Ethan's protective instincts had saved the evening, preserving both our safety and the dignity of the celebration. My heart raced, but I kept my composure, absorbing the gravity of the situation while preparing for the next phase, allowing the evening to unfold strategically, knowing we were now in control. As the celebration continued, I reflected on years of family dynamics, loyalty, and cautionary lessons learned. Moments like this weren't random. They echoed patterns I had long observed: ambition, deception, and the delicate balance of trust within a blended family. Vivienne's calculated attempt reminded me how easily intentions can be masked by charm and appearance. My gratitude toward Ethan was profound, but so was the realization that vigilance had to be constant. I pondered the consequences of unchecked ambition, the subtle manipulations I had endured silently over decades, and the importance of observing, anticipating, and acting with strategy. The incident reinforced the lesson that protection, trust, and quiet awareness often speak louder than confrontation, and that subtle, calculated responses were far more effective than reactive anger. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me: shock at the attempt on my safety and deep gratitude for Ethan's intervention. The thrill of danger averted left me shaken, yet aware of the power of calm, decisive action. I realized that even amid celebration and family unity, hidden tensions could surface at any moment. My heart swelled with pride in my son, a man whose intelligence, vigilance, and love had saved me without drawing attention. Simultaneously, a shiver ran through me, a reminder of how cunning ambition could manifest in everyday settings. In that quiet internal space, I acknowledged both fear and relief, understanding that the evening's trajectory had been forever altered. I would move forward with both caution and strategy, fully aware that the subtle games within families could be as dangerous as any public conflict. With the immediate danger neutralized, I shifted focus to observing the consequences. Vivienne's composure had begun to falter slightly, though she remained unaware of the switch. The plan was no longer reactive, it was strategic. I mentally mapped out the evening, noting opportunities for subtle influence, calculated presence, and observation of others' reactions. Every glance, gesture, and interaction became a piece of a larger puzzle. I resolved to remain composed, to let the scenario reveal truths on its own timeline, and to maintain dignity while influence spread quietly. This careful orchestration transformed a night of potential danger into one of control, foresight, and anticipation. The celebration had become a stage for subtle revelation, where careful observation and strategic patience could achieve outcomes far beyond immediate intervention. Minutes after Ethan switched the glasses, Vivienne began to speak, but her words slurred unexpectedly, and her usual poise crumbled. Laughter turned to concern as her sentences became jumbled, rambling from topic to topic with increasing intensity. Guests' eyes widened, glances exchanged, trying to make sense of the sudden change in behavior. The room's festive energy shifted subtly into confusion, though no one yet understood the reason. I observed carefully, keeping my composure as the scene unfolded. My heartbeat quickened not from fear but anticipation. This wasn't chaos, it was revelation disguised as an accident. Every stumble in her words exposed cracks in her controlled facade, hinting at truths she had tried to hide. I remained poised, absorbing each movement, each pause, knowing that the unfolding situation would soon create an impact far greater than any confrontation could. The guests' chatter shifted into whispers, their laughter now tinged with concern and curiosity. Subtle glances were exchanged as Vivienne's erratic rambling continued, her carefully curated image unraveling in real time. Conversations paused mid-sentence, eyes darting toward the source of disruption. I could feel the tension in the air, a delicate balance between shock, embarrassment, and intrigue. The once perfect atmosphere of celebration had transformed into a stage for unexpected truth. I stayed composed, watching reactions ripple across the room, noticing who displayed concern, who smirked discreetly, and who simply froze, unsure of how to respond. Each guest's reaction told a story, revealing their perceptions, biases, and understanding of family dynamics. The subtle chaos created a silent spotlight on Vivienne's unraveling composure, magnifying every imperfection in a way that words or direct confrontation never could. Amidst the growing murmurs and shifting energy, I maintained an outward calm, my composure a stark contrast to the unfolding drama. I scanned the room carefully, assessing who was observing Vivienne, who was whispering, and who remained oblivious. Every glance, every subtle gesture became a cue for understanding the family and business dynamics at play. While others reacted emotionally, I remained a silent observer, noting the ripple effect of her unraveling behavior. My awareness allowed me to anticipate the next moments, calculate the impact of reactions, and prepare for subtle interventions if needed. I felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction, knowing Ethan's quick action had prevented danger and now enabled a scenario where truth would reveal itself naturally. My poised presence underscored the difference between control and chaos in the room. Ethan leaned close to me, eyes sharp, hand discreetly signaling to remain patient. His calm, measured gestures conveyed a silent message. Let the moment unfold, do not intervene prematurely. He understood the magnitude of the opportunity before us. The room teetered on the edge of revelation, and any hasty action could dilute its impact. I nodded subtly, matching his composure, trusting his judgment entirely. Ethan's quiet control contrasted with Vivienne's spiraling energy, highlighting the power of strategic patience. His gaze told me that the culmination of the night's drama would have far more weight if allowed to develop naturally. Together, we became anchors of calm amid the shifting currents, prepared to guide the evening's revelation without stepping forward overtly. The silent tension became almost cinematic, every second a build-up to the inevitable turning point. As Vivienne continued rambling, the potential for public embarrassment grew increasingly clear. I noted the way guests stiffened, whispers multiplying as her faltering words drew attention. Even casual observers began to sense that something was amiss, their curiosity mingling with discomfort. I reflected on the delicate consequences of exposure. Reputations, pride, and perception were all at stake. Yet, despite the possibility of embarrassment, I felt no joy in witnessing her struggle. Instead, I recognized this as a moment of revelation, where truth emerged organically without manipulation. Ethan's intervention had prevented harm while creating an opportunity for clarity, a subtle correction in the family dynamic. The tension in the room highlighted the contrast between appearance and reality, and I observed with careful patience, understanding that the unfolding scene would teach lessons far more powerful than any direct confrontation. The room braced itself, though no one realized it yet. I sensed that the culmination of this delicate chaos was approaching, a dramatic reveal that would shift perspectives quietly but decisively. Every misstep in Vivienne's composure amplified the anticipation, each faltering word a note in the crescendo of revelation. I calculated timing, assessing the reactions of guests and family members, and felt a quiet thrill in the orchestration unfolding naturally. Ethan remained composed beside me, his confidence reinforcing the strategy of patience. I realized that the climax didn't require force or confrontation. It demanded observation, subtlety, and presence. As the room's energy tensed, I felt that moment of revelation. The turning point that would expose truths without ever having to speak my own name was imminent, and I welcomed it with poised anticipation. Every small gesture in the room now carried amplified meaning. Vivienne's hands trembled slightly as she tried to regain composure. Guests shifted in their seats, exchanged hesitant glances, and adjusted body language in subtle acknowledgement of the unusual situation. I observed discreetly as reactions rippled quietly. A raised eyebrow, a nervous cough, a tentative smile, all revealing tension, surprise, and intrigue. The energy of the room no longer revolved around celebration, but suspense, anticipation, and the quiet unraveling of facades. Through careful observation, I noted which guests were beginning to question appearances, who sensed hidden truths, and who remained oblivious. The unspoken drama played out like a cinematic scene, each subtle action contributing to the narrative of revelation, making the impact far more profound than any overt confrontation could achieve. Ethan stepped to the podium, adjusting the microphone with calm precision, his posture commanding yet controlled. Every eye in the room slowly turned toward him, curiosity and anticipation growing with each passing second. I watched quietly from my seat, heart pounding, aware that the next words would determine the tone of the evening. The tension was palpable. Vivienne's confusion contrasted sharply with Ethan's poise. He scanned the audience subtly, taking mental note of who would notice the underlying truths he intended to reveal. Each movement, each pause was deliberate, calculated to maximize impact without creating chaos. The celebratory atmosphere had shifted subtly, transforming into a stage for revelation. I felt a surge of quiet satisfaction knowing that strategic patience had set the perfect conditions for this moment. The room was primed, and Ethan was ready. Before speaking, Ethan leaned close to me, his voice low but steady. Dorothy let it unfold naturally. Watch and wait. His words were reassurance and instruction, a reminder that patience would create far more impact than intervention. I nodded subtly, internalizing the strategy we had discussed earlier. The subtle communication conveyed complete understanding without drawing attention from the crowd. I felt my heart settle, trust intertwining with anticipation. The room was tense but unaware, like a theater awaiting the final act. Every glance, gesture, and breath of the audience now carried meaning. Ethan's calm confidence reinforced my own composure. We were in perfect synchrony, silent partners in a plan unfolding with cinematic precision. Every second of waiting heightened the suspense, each subtle glance between us amplifying the anticipation of the dramatic reveal to come. Vivienne's poise began to unravel under the subtle pressure building around her. She straightened, smiled, and attempted casual conversation, but her eyes darted nervously as she caught hints of the shifting energy in the room. Guests, whispers, subtle glances, and uneven laughter heightened her unease. Her carefully curated facade of confidence began to fracture as she sensed attention turning elsewhere. I observed, composed, noting how every small misstep amplified her anxiety. Even her gestures, once elegant and assured, now seemed calculated, almost defensive. The contrast between her forced composure and Ethan's calm authority became increasingly apparent. Each moment magnified the tension in the room, creating a cinematic dynamic where power shifted quietly but visibly. Vivienne's confusion wasn't just internal, it radiated outward, affecting every person in her vicinity and setting the stage for the revelation to come. The subtle tension was contagious. Guests, initially engrossed in conversation and laughter, paused almost imperceptibly, sensing something extraordinary in the air. Whispered questions, exchanged glances, and hesitant smiles created an undercurrent of curiosity. No one could yet articulate the source, but the energy had undeniably changed. The room that had seemed celebratory now thrummed with anticipation. I remained composed, observing reactions with a keen eye, noting which guests were catching the subtleties and who remained oblivious. The contrast between visible enjoyment and hidden tension amplified the suspense, making every minor gesture feel significant. It was as though the entire audience was participating unconsciously in a theatrical moment, their reactions feeding into the narrative without realizing it. Each pause, each glance, each breath added layers to the unfolding story, heightening the cinematic drama of the evening. Family members and business executives displayed reactions that were quiet yet meaningful. Eyebrows raised, lips pressed tightly, hands folded or fidgeting, all subtle signs of growing realization. Those accustomed to controlling narratives found themselves caught off guard, unable to command the room as they had hoped. The shift in attention was barely noticeable to anyone outside the inner circle, yet it radiated like a current through the space. I noted each small movement, appreciating how carefully orchestrated patience had magnified its effect. The room's hierarchy of influence was bending quietly but decisively. Even powerful executives, normally confident and assertive, now reacted instinctively to the energy generated by Ethan's calm authority and Vivienne's visible confusion. Every subtle gesture contributed to an atmosphere where truth, strategy, and patience intertwined to reshape perceptions without a word needing to be spoken by me. As Ethan began his speech, every word resonated, drawing the audience into a tight focus. The room's chatter faded, replaced by the tension of listening intently, each guest hanging on every syllable. His voice was measured, confident, yet layered with nuance, revealing truths without accusations, guiding understanding without confrontation. The rhythm of his words orchestrated reactions across the room. Surprise, curiosity, and recognition flickered subtly across faces. I watched, steady and calm, as each phrase built suspense, revealing layers of intent and character that had previously remained hidden. The audience's engagement created an almost cinematic tableau, attention focused, expressions shifting, and energy crackling silently. Every glance exchanged, every subtle nod, reinforced the quiet drama, demonstrating how carefully delivered words could manipulate perception and subtly illuminate truth in a way that overt confrontation never could. From my vantage point, I observed the cumulative effect of Ethan's preparation and strategic timing. Vivienne's confusion, the audience's rapt attention, and the quiet shifts among family members confirmed that the plan was succeeding. Each reaction, subtle but telling, reinforced the impact of careful orchestration. I felt a swell of quiet pride, not for control, not for revenge, but for the power of patience, strategy, and awareness. The celebration had transformed into a scene where influence, observation, and timing had reshaped perceptions, teaching lessons without a single overt confrontation. I recognized that subtlety often carried far more weight than drama. This realization, the culmination of decades of experience, created a profound sense of satisfaction, reinforcing the idea that influence, when wielded thoughtfully, could achieve results far beyond force or argument. The suspense isn't over yet. Hit like and subscribe, because the next moments will leave you stunned. Ethan's voice carried smoothly across the hall, commanding attention without ever raising anger or blame. He praised both families for their ambition and achievements while weaving subtle insights into Vivienne's overreach and calculated maneuvers. Every word hinted at hidden agendas without naming anyone directly, allowing the truth to emerge naturally. Guests began connecting dots, recognizing patterns they hadn't noticed before. I felt a quiet thrill as the narrative unfolded exactly as planned. Ethan's strategy was masterful. Revelation without conflict, exposure without drama. The crowd's reactions, raised eyebrows, tentative whispers, quiet realization, were proof that subtlety could create impact far stronger than confrontation. I observed, composed, as the careful orchestration turned a potentially explosive evening into a controlled yet dramatic unveiling, shifting perceptions while preserving decorum. Vivienne tried to steer the conversation, adjusting her posture, smiling more broadly, and attempting witty remarks. But the shift in energy was undeniable. Guests no longer responded as she expected. Her influence had quietly eroded. Every attempt at control was met with polite acknowledgement rather than the admiration she sought. Subtle glances and whispers reinforced that the room's attention was no longer hers to command. I watched her frustration build internally, though externally she remained composed, a delicate mask failing to conceal her awareness of the changing dynamics. The evening had subtly flipped the power balance, and though no one had openly challenged her, the impact was undeniable. This quiet unraveling demonstrated that influence and control were fragile when patience, strategy, and observation were applied masterfully. From my seat, I felt the shift in perception around me. My subtle gestures, calm composure, and thoughtful presence influenced conversations and glances in ways words could not. Guests now noticed the difference between genuine care and calculated ambition, often attributing grace and dignity to me rather than forcing recognition from others. The quiet authority I carried resonated throughout the room, reshaping how people assessed relationships, intentions, and influence. I didn't need to speak. The weight of observation, presence, and timing did the work silently. Every nod, appreciative glance, or whispered comment reinforced the idea that influence could be wielded without confrontation. I realized that sometimes the most powerful statements were made not in words, but in poised action and perceptive awareness, leaving a lasting mark on everyone present. As the evening continued, subtle shifts in energy were palpable. Guests began reassessing alliances, observing interactions, and recalibrating assumptions. The previously unquestioned authority Vivienne carried was replaced by recognition of nuance, subtlety, and patience, qualities that now seemed more compelling than wealth or charm. Family members exchanged quiet, meaningful glances, noting who had true awareness and control. I remained composed, observing how each subtle gesture and reaction contributed to the new hierarchy of respect. The merger celebration had transformed into an unspoken lesson in perception, strategy, and influence. Without confrontation or drama, the power dynamics shifted organically, highlighting the quiet impact of vigilance, composure, and patience. It became clear that influence wasn't about dominance. It was about presence, timing, and subtle orchestration, a lesson the evening imparted gently but unmistakably. I walked through the room with measured grace, acknowledging smiles and casual greetings while silently observing the impact of earlier events. Each conversation subtly reinforced the influence of calm, dignified presence over manipulation and ambition. Guests unconsciously gravitated toward me, respecting composure and thoughtful timing rather than bold assertion. The quiet authority I embodied became a template for interaction. Influence could be present without overt action, power without aggression. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing the evening had shifted without confrontation, chaos, or humiliation. The ripple effect of careful observation and strategic patience spread effortlessly, leaving an indelible impression. Every glance, smile, and gesture I offered subtly reshaped perceptions, proving that dignity and measured action could achieve more than overt force, leaving a legacy of calm authority behind. The family's dynamics evolved quietly yet unmistakably. Alliances, respect, and attentiveness shifted toward those demonstrating awareness, composure, and patience rather than those seeking overt control. Vivienne's attempts at dominance had lost traction, while Ethan's discreet protection and my subtle presence reshaped the narrative. No one was publicly punished, yet everyone understood the shift in influence. Conversations, glances, and small gestures reflected the new equilibrium, teaching lessons without confrontation. It was a sophisticated, quiet form of justice, less about retribution, more about realignment of respect and acknowledgement. The evening's events became a subtle turning point, a reminder that presence, patience, and strategy often have more enduring power than direct confrontation. Influence had shifted organically, leaving everyone to reassess priorities, relationships, and perception naturally. By the night's end, I felt a profound sense of empowerment. I had navigated potential danger, observed unfolding events, and allowed strategy and composure to reshape perceptions without raising my voice. My dignity remained intact, my influence unquestioned, and my awareness recognized quietly but meaningfully. The family and guests had witnessed subtle lessons in patience, observation, and careful orchestration. No confrontation, no punishment, no public humiliation, just the quiet power of measured action and insight. I felt calm, respected, and in full command of my presence. The evening had reinforced the truth I had long known that influence, patience, and dignity are far stronger than overt power or drama, leaving a lasting mark that no one could overlook.